Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Entrepreneurship Unlocked. Today on our show, we have Bob Campana. Bob is the owner of Redwood Cafe Tours, which is an international travel company, and his new book, Don't Look Down, is now available on Amazon. Today, we will learn about Bob's entrepreneurial journey. Bob, thanks for joining us today.
Nate, thanks so much for having me. I'm kind of been looking forward to this all week. So looking forward to having a conversation with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is one I've been looking forward to very much myself. Before our podcast, we talked a bit, and I mentioned you have a very rich history as an entrepreneur. Not many people can say that they've been an entrepreneur for over 50 years. This is something that you got into at a very young age, which I think is incredible. So, Bob, take me back to the first time that you ever thought about running your own business.
Well, I'll reference the book. What basically happened was that when I was 21 years old, I had some neighbors that lived next to me that were young men. Their father was a petroleum engineer, and he worked for a company called Schlumberger, which is an international oil service company. And that company would transport these young men that were in college to wherever their father was in the world, pay their round trip airfare. He happened to be stationed in Jakarta, Indonesia at the time. And that meant that they could go halfway around the world to Indonesia and the other half around. So it was a round the world trip. They invited me to go on this journey. We went around 5-6 months, traveled the world, went to like 13, 15 different countries. And the experience of seeing the world that a person that had never left California. And then on top of that, what was going on in the world. When I came home, I was walking across a overpass on this Bayshore Freeway in San Francisco. And I had an epiphany of the wealth of this nation with all of these cars and bumper to bumper traffic with one person in it, and the wealth that represented of our country and the opportunity that America offered. I made a decision at that point at 21. My father had been an entrepreneur. My grandfather had been an entrepreneur. And I said, I'm going to start my own company. I went home and announced that to my father, and he looked at me. It was like the stupidest thing I ever said in my life, because I had no clue as to what that actually meant. I had spent all my money on this world trip. I started working for a guy where we started making redwood hot tubs out of a pipeline that was during World War II. The government confiscated or requisitioned all the metal, scrap metal. So there was these energy little reservoirs in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California, and they made these wooden pipes out of redwood that fed their generators. Well, in the early 70s, they started to replace these pipes with metal pipes. We made an auction. We had $500. We bid $500 for this redwood pipeline that was 1,700 feet long. It was 5 feet in diameter. It had these rings around it. We took a chainsaw, chopped it into sections, put it onto a flatbed truck, disassembled those, reassembled them, put a bottom on them, and made them vintage hot tubs. I think it was 175 hot tubs. We paid $700 for the pipeline. We sold 175 hot tubs at $1,700 a piece. So that coup basically started my company, and that company basically was working for swimming pool contractors at the time. The contractors would, the customer would be building a pool and they'd want a hot tub, not a traditional spa. So we started working as a subcontractor underneath the pool contractors. At that point, we looked at each other and go, we could build these swimming pools too. So we went and got a contractor's license from the state of California, started building swimming pools. And after approximately 25 years of building pools, I had built the company up to had 170 employees. We were building around 500 complete backyard projects a year. And it was extremely successful, but it was also extremely stressful, having 170 employees. So I had basically maneuvered a deal with developers where I would be able to go in and build the swimming pools while their homes were being constructed in new subdivisions. And we were able to take that financing of a 30-year mortgage and put it into a pool, backyard landscaping, which basically amortized the payment out so people spent more money. I had basically was taking all of the nice jobs. I had 17 developers that I had made deals with. So I was basically an order taker at that time. People would call me. They'd say lot number 12, the people want a pool. We go out, design the pool, build it through the construction process. And then when the house closed escrow, we get paid. So then I had to learn about revolving lines of credit and all kinds of other things that were able to make that happen. It got to a point to where one of my competitors said, we're tired of getting the little crappy jobs. Why don't you sell me your company? So they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And at 50 years old, I semi-retired. I owned this wedding facility that we had bought previously called the Vintage Gardens. And my daughters had talked me into, why don't you make it into a restaurant? And any entrepreneur has ever hears the word restaurant, it's very frightening word. But you know what? I was kind of full of myself at the time. And I figured, I just built this company up. I did really good with it. I'm up for the challenge to basically see if I can build a successful restaurant.
Fascinating.
So I took on that journey. And 20 years after that, it became the most popular restaurant in our area. It was voted the 17th most romantic restaurant out of 66,000 restaurants in the Yelp review of California. And that human connection that is established in the community, and we're losing that human connection through technology so much to where the interpersonal relationship that we were able to develop and be able to nurture through the restaurant really gave me a high energy level where I was able to interconnect with so many people in the community. I basically discovered the value of it at COVID. When COVID came around, the state of California, I don't know if you're aware of it, but they shut down restaurants on 3 different occasions. When we basically went back in and started again after COVID, the response was overwhelming with the community coming back to the restaurant. And I had this discovery that people need that third place. They need that place to escape, to basically reward themselves. And that was the impetus of what I had done with my restaurant. I sat at every table. I basically looked at lighting design. I looked at every single aspect of the restaurant experience, and I took it to another level. Well, as the story continues, I was directly next to a Mormon church. And this Mormon church, we had a reciprocal agreement where if we had a big wedding, we could use their parking lot. If they had a big function, they could use ours. And we started doing quinceañeras for the Hispanic community, which we have a large Central Valley. The quinceañera, for those of you that don't know what that is, it's when a 15-year-old young Hispanic girl is introduced to the world as a young woman, and the families throw big parties for this. Well, these parties are alcohol fest, tequila, wonderful things. And some of these participants would go over and upchuck in the Mormon parking lot. Well, I didn't know. I didn't know that was going on, right? So the Mormons called me and said, "Hey, man, we got a problem. We got to stop this reciprocal parking agreement and so forth." But one of the guys, which is stake president of the Mormon Church, said, "Why don't you call Salt Lake and talk to them about selling you an acre of ground to expand your parking lot?" I'm kind of looking at him like, okay, I'm going to call Mormon World Headquarters, call some guy up and tell him I want to buy an acre of ground for one of their churches. Okay. So I proceed on this phone call this guy. He's on the 11th story in Salt Lake. He's a lawyer. We start having this conversation, and they're very nice about it. They go, "Well, we'll think about it." And, like what's going on. And it went on for a couple of 3 months, and they decided, no, we're not going to do it. I go, all right. Well, about 4 years later, the same guy calls me back. And I go, well, maybe they changed their mind. They're going to do something different. He goes, no, we want to buy you. At that point, it was revealed to me that they were going to build one of the 6 or 7 temples that the Mormon Church builds worldwide on this location. Wow. And a bar and a restaurant on the entrance colonnade into a temple was not going to cut it. So we started a negotiation, which took a couple of 3 years. I went on a trip to Salt Lake in that time, and there's a lot of temples in Salt Lake, obviously. And you would see these roads going to the temple, and occasionally you'd see like a 15-foot masonry block wall built around a house. And those were the people that got too greedy with the church. And they just said, fine, we're not going to pay your price. We're just going to build a wall around your house.
Oh my gosh.
So we're in this negotiation, and I'm cognizant that they could do that. When they got to 3.5 times appraised value to buy my restaurant, that deal was never coming around ever again. So I basically negotiated a 20-month window where I could move the restaurant because it was such a popular restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And I sold them the property. That started a timeline. And as I discovered relatively quickly, to rebuild what I had, buy new land, move the buildings or build new buildings, it started to get prohibitively expensive. That's when I was building another restaurant in another town, and I knew I could bring my team there. I could keep everybody working. I could keep everything intact. And a very large developer, a worldwide developer called Cambay Development, was building and was working on a large development in Central California called River Islands. It's a 15,000 house subdivision. It's like immense, 20 lakes, all this kind of stuff. They came to me and said, we want you to move Redwood Cafe as the centerpiece of our community because of the human connection that was associated with what I had grown in that community. The main lady called Susan Deloso would go to my restaurant for her birthday, anniversaries. She loved the restaurant. She loved the human connection that we had established there. And she wanted to bring that. So this is the cool thing about it. We basically chopped the restaurant up, put it on wheels, moved it 20 miles down the freeway to a new location. And now we are building a brand new 16,000 square foot restaurant, 2-story, and we are inserting the old building into the new building. This is an amazing construction project that's going on. It's like a restaurant fairy tale, so to speak, or whatever. And that's my current project. And on YouTube, you can watch us building this restaurant. It's basically fantastic. She read the book, my book, and Cambay is owned by a billionaire called Mr. Chapman out of the UK. And when she decided she wanted to move the restaurant, she had a couple of lots in this subdivision where they wanted to put it. And we made a YouTube video, herself and myself, and we sent this YouTube video to the billionaire. In 24 hours, he called back, said, I love this deal. I want to do it. In 2 weeks, he randomly shows up. Susan, Alan wants to meet you. We sit down for about 2.5 hours with Mr. Chapman, and he's basically just interviewing, getting a feel for who I am and what I stand for and what's going on. He is the third largest landowner in Napa. He owns 1,400 acres, 2 wineries over there, and he had been saving this like the premier lot of the whole subdivision to put a mini winery on to promote his Napa wines and all of that. After the meeting with Mr. Chapman, he got in the car with Susan and said, Susan, I want to go in partners with Bob. I want to give him my lot that I've been saving for the winery, and I want to build the Redwood Cafe on that lot. Make it happen. So now I'm in partners with a billionaire. We're building this restaurant. We're moving forward. And at 71 years old, after being an entrepreneur for 50 years, I basically told him, I go, I'm 71 years old. I just sold my restaurant. I love traveling. I have the small travel company. We do small group tours around Europe and Oceania, and I'm really enjoying that. But you're kind of rocking the apple cart here because you're making such an opportunity for me to basically grow the legacy of the Redwood Cafe, bring my staff in, basically grow this a phenomenal restaurant. he goes, well, I'm going to pay you to do it. And
Not a bad deal.
No. So I basically adjusted my retirement plans to rekindle and build this mega restaurant with landscaping and gardens and all of this kind of thing. And that's what's going on. The book was a outgrowth from me wanting to let my grandchildren know who I was and what was going on. I hired a ghostwriter to help me write the book. I don't want to make it sound like I sat down with a typewriter and wrote this book. I had somebody help me with it. Mm-hmm. He was an editor for Inc. magazine, an entrepreneur magazine, and based out of New Canaan, Connecticut, Niles Howard. And we were writing this book, and when it's getting towards to the end, he goes, you know, Bob, we should submit this book to a publisher. This is an interesting story. It's an interesting journey. It's inspirational. What you've done, starting out with $500 and blah, blah, all of this. We submitted to a publisher, and 1 week they call back and they say, we want to publish your book. Now, from what I've heard, people look for get their books published for years, you know, and this happens in 1 week. I go, what's going on here? I mean, I'm kind of shocked about this whole situation. So it actually what it ended up doing is that, I don't know if you've ever written a book or been involved with it, but they read the book and then they go, we love this book, but we want to rewrite it. I go, you want to what? So we had the book was more like a memoir about my story, but they wanted to do it more of an entrepreneurial story about what had happened. So what happened is we wrote the book, and then in different facets of my life on what was going on, what lessons did I draw out of those experiences to basically forward my journey as an entrepreneur. So that's kind of what the book's about.
Very cool. Yeah, very exciting time. Like you mentioned to me earlier when we were talking, you mentioned the book just released about a month ago. So everybody should go out and get it. Bob, aside from Amazon, do you have a website where people can get the book? Or
it's really simple. It's bobcampana.com. And then if you wanted to look at the construction of what I'm doing, at 70 years old, I started a YouTube channel. Okay. I mean, it's just like, my wife is going, oh my God, what do we got going on here? You know, so I started this YouTube channel. It's called Get Back the Number 2 Work ! And learning about YouTube is fascinating. The whole podcasting is fascinating to me. Social media, like I've never really, I grew my business with the human connection of interconnection with people. I never had the tools of social media to build my pool company or my restaurant or anything like that. So it was always basically interconnecting with people, leaving them with a positive impression, and then wanting them to give referrals to other people. One of the stories that I could share with all entrepreneurs is the mechanics of what I was basically doing when I was building the pools and when I was building the restaurant. And I read this very interesting book. It was written by a guy by the name of Jan Carlson, and he took over Scandinavian Air Systems that was losing $17 million a year. In 36 months or something like that, he turned a $77 million profit. The Harvard Business Review went into him and said, exactly what did you do? He says, well, for about the first 3 months, I just kind of watched what was going on. And then I basically had an epiphany that there were 2 segments to every transaction in the airline, but it was true for almost all business transactions. He called them memory moments and moments of truth. And the memory moments were any time that a customer had an interaction with the business and had an opportunity to make a judgment. And there was only 3 judgment outcomes: positive, negative, neutral. And what he did is he said, I started managing the memory moments. And he figured out on an airline flight, this was when people called up to make a reservation before you could go online to make a reservation with an airline and all of that. And he basically said these exchanges. So like you would call up to make a reservation. How did that go? Positive, negative, neutral. You showed up at the airport. How did the sky cap take your luggage out? positive, negative, neutral. How did they check you into your plane? Blah, blah, blah. You figure there was around 25 opportunities in an airline flight. Was my coffee hot? Was my seat comfortable? All of these different ideas. And then he would wait for the moment of truth. The moment of truth would come when a person was waiting at an airport and they say, who are you flying home with? And they say, well, Scandinavian Air Systems. And then they would give examples of the memory moments, how they were positive, and give an endorsement for the airline. Wow. So I modeled my pool business and my restaurant business and managed the memory moments. So in a swimming pool construction, I had probably around 40 to 45 memory moments. Did the guy show up on time? Was your job site laid and clean? How was the communication going? What was the quality of the work? If there was a problem, how did you resolve it? All of that type of thing. So managing the memory moments, waited for the moment of truth. And the moment of truth was when they had the party. They basically had the friends and family over and they're barbecuing the hot dogs. And one of the neighbors would say, we're thinking about building a pool. How did this company do? And would you hire them again? Yeah. The person's mind would reverse search all of the memory moments, anything negative, they would blurt it out. If you handle the negative problem, which almost always would have a problem in construction, you're always going to have a little hiccup here or there.
Yeah.
And when that would happen, I would basically use one sentence. I would go out to the customer, get called on the carpet. Look, we got a crack in our concrete or whatever the problem was. And I would ask them a very simple question. I would say, what do you suggest we do? And if the customer had a reasonable request, it was granted immediately. Well, then that's what we're going to do. Okay. So at the moment of truth, when they said I had a crack in my concrete, we called Bob out. We asked him to replace this piece of concrete. He replaced it instantly. It's not that they don't make mistakes, but they're honest people. And that would give the endorsement. So anybody that would dissect their business and look at where the points of opportunity for a customer to judge your interaction and then monitor those interactions and wait for them to give you an endorsement, I think that would be very good advice to follow.
Yeah, 100%. And as a marketing agency owner, I really understand the value in actually talking to your clients or customers and getting that feedback. So many businesses are afraid to do that, or they're just not thinking about that, right? But that is something that helps you get more referral business overall, and something that helps improve all of your processes. And yeah.
No doubt about it. And I've also really made some interesting discoveries. I think I mentioned I do this travel thing. We're starting to work on an entrepreneurial travel experience where we are going to take entrepreneurs and industry specific tours. So like if you're in the restaurant business, we'll take you to France, we'll take you to Spain, we'll take you to Italy. You will meet restaurant owners in those countries. You will discuss with them their problems, their solutions, their way that they operate their business, and then have a brotherhood over a 7 to 10 day period where you're basically really absorbing transformational information in a foreign environment where it's not like on a podcast or something where you're actually living it. And I think that that's going to be a really exciting tours that we're going to be starting to work on. And we're going to be taking one to China here on procurement of different products in China. So the utilization of technology to find those people out in the world that have these common interests that we can pull together like we're doing on this entrepreneurial podcast is extremely fascinating to me. At 71 years old, being able to have this conversation and connection, and who knows how many people will actually witness it, it just blows my mind.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, yeah, what a great way to get a bunch of people that are in the same industry that are passionate about the same things and want to get better at their craft, right? And allowing them to do so in a way that involves traveling the world, meeting people just like them. And to your point earlier, learning in a foreign environment, right, where things may be done a little bit differently. But those are the types of findings that lead to epiphanies and lead to, rapid growth. When you could bring that knowledge back with you to your hometown, apply it to your restaurant. I think that's incredible. What would you say?
One of the most important out of all of that, you're going to have lifelong friends. At the end of
Absolutely.
that, at that 10 days, you're going to have 6 people that you had this journey together with, that you shared together with, and you will have a friendship for life with those people. I can assure you. We do other trips, and at the end of a 10-day period where you've broken bread with people over 10 days, where you've
Mhm.
traveled with them in 10 days, you've experienced the same new things with them in 10 days. The friendship thing is absolutely amazing that you can get when you have a proximity with people over a condensed amount of time like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know obviously you've done tons of trips, right?
Oh yeah.
In terms of guiding, tons and tons of trips. What would you say is maybe one of the more, personally meaningful trips that you've guided in your time?
I I personally I really loved Australia. I
Mhm.
mean, because of the adventure of it, the outback, and the raw hardiness of the Australian people, and
Mhm.
it's like going to the USA. I'm imagining, because I don't know, maybe 50, 60 years ago, where you go down the street and all the shops are there. You have the man that's repairing the shoes. You have the
Mhm.
bakery. You have the little dress shops. You have the shoe store. You have all of those parts of the community are in Australia, also in New Zealand. I love that. On the other hand, European experiences on food in Italy, Sicily has such a family oriented society and culture that we
Mhm.
all long for. One of the things that you do discover when you're traveling around the world, the influence of the American tech industry is everywhere. I
Mhm.
don't care where you go, people are in their phones, they're looking at that. And that in some ways is kind of sad because the human connection is kind of being lost in that technological field.
Certainly.
And the human connection, that's kind of where the restaurant really gives me life, because I'm in the fine, casual, special occasion section of the restaurant industry. And in a lot of cases, it's like a reward and it's escapism for the customer. They're going to give themselves a reward for a few hours. They're going to go have wine. They're going to have a nice meal. They're going to share with their wife or another couple an experience. And my job is to create an environment where they forget their troubles, they enjoy truly a rewarding experience. Acoustically, they can hear what they're talking about. Visually, it's a
Mhm.
beautiful experience. And when they walk in out that door, their problems hit them right back in the face again. They haven't gone anywhere. But for those 2 hours, they were able to escape. And I think that the story of being able to create businesses that create that type of experiential things for people, not like basically transactional, are going to
Yeah.
give the entrepreneur a far more fulfilling experience than basically looking at a computer screen and just sending drop shipments to someplace. So in my particular case, I love the interaction with people and I thrive on it. And I think that most people should try and cultivate that skill more in their business because it's very rewarding. I also, though, saw an information where 85% of all communication now are text messages.
Oh man.
People don't even want to pick up the phone and call you or talk with you anymore. In the United States, if you start picking up a conversation in the grocery line, people look at you like you're a freaking weirdo or something, you know?
It's
So
crazy.
it really is depressing that that's
Yeah.
like that. But one of the things, the restaurant, as the owner of the restaurant, and I'm able to walk up to their table, it's a
Mhm.
very unique situation where I can speak with them. They're honored that the owner came to talk to them at their
Mhm.
table and so forth. And it's a really a wonderful experience to be able to talk with so many people in the community, and that cements the growth of that restaurant. And that's what they wanted at River Islands, was they're building a community and they wanted to have that glue to hold it together. And they felt that our organization would be able to provide that for them versus a Olive Garden or some other chain restaurant, which
Yeah.
doesn't really understand the those dynamics. I don't think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, yeah, and you're doing a great job of really one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, how do you establish that human connection within the restaurant space? But I think the best way to do it is just, yeah, walk up to the tables yourself, say, hey, I'm the owner. Why don't you introduce myself? Thanks for coming in, learn a little bit about them maybe. My parents live in Chicago. They go to this Italian restaurant all the time. And whenever I'm in town, I'll go there with them as well. And they know the owner. And the reason that they know the owner is just because he comes up and says hello every time, right? It's not like he's a neighbor or someone they knew from way back, but now they've established a relationship with the ownership of this restaurant. And it's been one of probably their favorite spot over the last, 5, 6, 7 years.
The owner respects them as people. Mm-hmm. They love being identified when they go into the restaurant. They're a regular customer, and we all as individuals yearn for that connection with people, but for so many reasons, which I'm not a psychologist or whatever it is, but the thing is, it seems like this technology is separating us more than it's pulling us together, and the skill of interconnection. So like when I was selling swimming pools, I would go out and I probably went on like 8 or 10,000 appointments over my course of my career. Wow. And every one of those appointments was a face-to-face meeting with a husband and wife in their kitchen table to talk to them about their dreams. And we all have dreams. So I had to cultivate a skill to where I could ferret out what their dream was and then make a sketch of it, and then convince them that I was capable of reproducing that sketch in their backyard. It wasn't like I could go and walk over to the Mustang and it's got a 3-speed and it's got this and there it is, and it's candy apple red. I had to
not tangible quite yet.
I had to tell the story, and I had to paint the story with words, and being able to cultivate that skill over time, I think was one of the things that really helped me foster the ability to connect with people. And it's so fulfilling. People love being recognized, but they're shy of that interaction. And being able to cultivate that, I think all entrepreneurs would need to practice on that. I'm mentoring a young entrepreneur that I met when I was just in Italy a couple of weeks ago, and he's doing like kind of like a knockoff of an Airbnb scheduling thing and some other things for website development and everything. And this guy, wicked smart. He can make AI agents like an overnight, I don't know if you tried to do it, but it's a lot. It's not as easy as it sounds, right? He can do all this kind of thing, but he is so intimidated to talk to anybody. And he's gone through college and the soft skills. Yeah. And I think that people don't put enough emphasis on those.
Especially people my age, being a 29-year-old, right? It's so many of my peers are afraid of rejection or even like a mild level of confrontation, right? In the workplace. And for me, luckily, the way that I kind of learned to adapt to these types of things, growing up in Chicago, while I was in college, I was a sales agent for Aflac. So basically what I would do is meet with businesses, try to sell the business owner or decision maker on, letting me meet their employees and selling them policies on an individual basis. But basically my day-to-day was walking into skyscrapers downtown Chicago, walking into buildings, introducing myself, being assertive and trying to book meetings. And, you get 100 no's a day sometimes, right? But you learn lessons along the way. And like that, just those 2 summers that I did that, now any meeting that I do, I'm like, nothing is that difficult, right? Or any outreach that I do is not nearly as difficult as that was when I was so young and didn't have the skills developed yet. So yeah, for me, I'm really grateful to have had that experience, but so many people that are around my age, a little bit older, a little bit younger, they've never developed, they've never hardened themselves to, that rejection and been able to just get past it. Right. So that's a skill
that's such a true statement that you're making, because any entrepreneur is going to have rejection. It's like a part of life. And depending upon how you are able to overcome that objection in your inner thoughts, you see, we have your shoulder on one side saying you can, the other shoulder saying you can't. Who are you listening to? And when you get that rejection and then you amplify it through negative reinforcement through your self-talk, it can be a downward spiral and it's really not good. Whereas if you look at the rejection as I'm just that much closer to a yes, because now I've had one more rejection, and be able to toughen yourselves up a little bit, that's going to serve you well. And I think that as you look back on your Aflac experience, I think that you would say that was probably one of the more valuable things that you did in your career to start out, which helped you be able to communicate in a cold call situation, gain credibility and trust with those people. And as you were able to get more skilled at it, your self-confidence rose immeasurably versus when you first started.
Oh yeah. I mean, when I got my first meeting, I couldn't believe it, so I was making cold calls, tons of them every day. You finally get your first meeting, your first few meetings, you run those presentations. They go terribly because they're the first ones that you do, but yeah, just getting the reps in, right, is what it was everything.
That's the miles on the road. I referenced how many meetings I had with husband and wives, and then being able to look in people's eyes, be able to understand where their emotions were, and then guide through questions where they wanted to be, and craft your presentation to where you were actually a helper and supporter and not a salesperson. Everybody wants to buy something. Nobody wants to be sold something. And being able to put your presentation together in such a way and craft your questions so you can ferret out what's important to that customer, which I basically learned from a sales trainer way back named Tom Hopkins. I don't know if you ever heard of Tommy, but he is a great sales trainer. And in my day, I would listen to motivational tapes and cassettes as I drove from job to job. And that was my, education. We didn't have podcasts that we could listen to. We would listen to these recorded cassettes of these tapes. But a never ending learning process is what you choose to be when you're an entrepreneur. And that learning process is a $5 million business is a different business to run than a $1 million business versus a $10 million business. The problems are different than a $15 million business. And I have never ran a $100 million corporation, but I'm sure that there's a completely different set of rules when you get to that level. So for me, I've been a brick and mortar guy. I've always started out with my own funds. I've basically started bought and sold companies, built companies over time. And every one of those experiences has basically made me a stronger person. And every one of those experiences has fostered countless failures. And failure is the teacher. Success is not the teacher. Failure requires self-assessment. What went wrong? How could I change things to make it better? How could I basically have adjusted what I said where the outcome would have been different? That is where you really learn how to craft and move forward. If you just basically roll the dice and you get lucky sevens every time, you're not learning anything.
Totally. Yeah, no, that is so true. Definitely my biggest learning moments have been when things maybe have went south with one of the clients that I'm working with, or, during COVID. That was a big learning moment for me. During that time, what I wanted to do was to move to England, work for a marketing agency, kind of, part-time, maybe run my own agency on the side and develop it over time. But what I saw was how the British government shut everything down, especially restaurants. It was crazy. From what I was told, you as a restaurant weren't even able to open for delivery during many periods during COVID in England, which is absolutely insane. So that was a huge turnoff to me. And I'm like, I can't run a business in a country that's going to be shutting down businesses left and right. I mean, if for a marketing agency to survive, business needs to be taking place. Because, if the first expense that businesses always cut during tough times are going to be the marketing budget. So yeah, which is the biggest mistake. Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you consider, as a digital marketing agency owner, when you think about how these platforms work, especially in a digital space, right? Like Google ads, SEO, social media advertising, it becomes cheaper when there's less players involved, right? It's an auction model. So if a bunch of advertisers are pulling money out of these platforms, that is statistically the best time for you to put money in, because you're not competing with 100 businesses. You might be competing with 10, right?
Yes.
On the flip side, we see this, we have Black Friday, Cyber Monday coming up very soon, right? That's obviously a big time for many of my e-commerce clients that I work with, brands that sell products on a website or on Amazon. Probably for most of them, it's the biggest time of the year, between now and Christmas.
No doubt.
Yeah, 100%. And you see the cost of advertising skyrocket on Google and Meta and these different platforms during this time of year, because everybody's flooding the auction with huge advertising budgets that they've been saving over the last few months or 6 months or so. So that's, when I work with smaller e-commerce clients, maybe they have a budget of, $2,000 to $5,000 per month to advertise, right? And they say, Nate, I want to go big on Black Friday, Cyber Monday. I tell them, you may not want to do that because you're going to be competing with players that are spending $500,000 a month, right? And who do you think Google and Meta are going to kind of give the advantage to, right? They don't want to lose those guys as an advertiser. They'll be okay with losing your $2,000 per month. So, getting strategic around those times a year is important for those types of e-commerce businesses.
Isn't it all about the story?
100%.
So the thing is that I'm discovering that in this communication venue. When I was on face-to-face, I only had to tell two people a story. And I would be able to get feedback from those people when I was actually crafting the story. Whereas with what you're doing, being able to craft a story that is competing with all the other stories that are people going out there is definitely a skill that is something that's going to be very valuable over time. And being able to make a story that is credible and interesting for the potential client. And that's what fascinates me about this podcasting. It fascinates me about the YouTube component. When I'm on a tour, I'm able to craft the experience along with the story to basically make a memorable impression in a foreign land where everything's new to everybody, everything's discovery, everything's adventure. It's being able to incite those emotions electronically is something I'm very curious if I'm able to ever achieve that, because that's a hard one to marry the story with the visual and to pull all that together in a way that I watch TikTok now. I watch like YouTube. The quality of the storytelling, the quality of the presentations is good. The bar is getting higher and higher and higher for like a little bozo like me that's got a few cameras and wants to turn around and make something of any interest. The bar is getting higher and higher to be able to be a quality storyteller. But if the story's good, it might not matter how much the quality of the video is, as long as the story is in capturing and the story is interesting to enough people. So I'm really working, me personally, I'm working on that skill now. And
100%. Yeah, I think that's very interesting, and something that not a lot of people are talking about. Is the storytelling is everything, right? The quality of the camera you have, sure, does it make a difference? Yes. But it doesn't make the biggest difference, to be totally honest, right? Your ability to connect with people, to have what you say resonate with people, for people to be able to relate to you, for you to be able to solve people's problems or show them something in a way that they've never seen it. These are the types of things that actually make people, if we're talking about it in a marketing sense, right? These are the types of things that make people want to take action or to follow you or to engage with you more, understand your perspective more, get in touch with you potentially, right? Fill out a form on your website, buy a product on your website, those types of things. What I'm seeing in the advertising world right now is content is everything, right? Content has always been king, but how it's different now than it's been over the last 2 to 5 years is so many of these platforms that I use to help my clients market themselves are leaning into AI much now more than ever, of course, right? And they're going to continue to do this. And there's good that comes with it. There's bad that comes with it. There's neutral that comes with it. But in terms of how I share my capabilities with businesses, I lean very much into the creative, because anyone can pick an audience to target. Anyone can set up a campaign that retargets your website visitors. These things are very, very easy to do. You can watch a YouTube video and figure this out within an hour, right? But what not everybody can do is produce creative that actually connects with individuals and makes them want to take action.
And I don't see how AI does that. I don't see what's. I don't know. Where do you live? Just as I can ask, what state or wherever.
Denver, Colorado.
Okay, so if you go into subdivisions or you go into new developments, most of the designs and things are homogenized because the developer gets a plan approved, then they don't want to go through all the bureaucracy to get another plan approved. So all the freaking houses look the same. All the shopping centers look the same. All this homogenization is basically, it's like a development pablum, right? Well, I think that AI is going to put that in the digital space. I think that it's going to be very obvious to people that things are being generated by AI. They're not really that creative and everything. And so the human connection and the ability to create truly engaging stories, AI, I just don't see that happening.
I agree.
Maybe in the future it will, the advances, but as of today, it's going to take a mind, a human being, to translate that story into something that'll pull on your heartstring, or it'll basically say, this person's trustworthy. I can listen to them. I think that they've been on the journey before. It's like when I look at the TikTok, I look at YouTube, everybody's looking for the way. How am I going to get successful? And I'm going to show you how to do it. And this guy's going to show you how to do it. And in most cases, you have to do it yourself. You have to go on that journey yourself. Now, if you want to walk with someone that's been there before as an advisor, or somebody that can basically help you calm your nerves when you get your first state tax audit, or what are we going to do when we have a lawsuit, or what happens when people I have customer relation problems or employee situations. All of those things can be helped by an entrepreneur that has years of experience, but they have to run that race themselves. They have to go through that, inject themselves into those situations, which will basically pop up just being in business. And those are the educators. And that's what basically builds your character. And basically all of those experiences help you make better decisions going forward. And you can't just spitball the decisions when you haven't had experience that basically lets you understand the ramifications of some decisions that you make.
Totally. Yeah. And look, you can listen to all the self-help gurus and business gurus that you want. But the truth is, if you're not taking action on the types of things that they're saying, you're really listening more for entertainment purposes than you are for self-improvement, business improvement, life improvement, those types of things.
So true. And taking action, like you said, a lot of your friends don't want to interconnect with people or talk with people, or, well, that's required when they tell you to do that, because there's not any chat bot that's got a credit card that's going to buy your product. And there's not, and you're not going to have a closing question come from an AI model. So the thing is that you might click on a $39 toy on TikTok. That's fine. But if I'm sending a $10,000 trip, they want to talk to somebody. They're not going to basically just like push, okay, let's do it. And without any interconnection with people. And as the price of poker goes up and the price of your offerings go up, it's going to require that interconnection with people to basically make those sales. I don't care what. Nobody's going to spend 10 grand by basically just looking at a website and clicking on it.
Totally. Yeah. And that's a huge misconception. A lot of clients that I work with think that's kind of how it works sometimes. And that's not how it works, right? It comes down to that human connection at the end of the day, being one of the most important things in the business world today, especially in a world that's so digitalized and leaning into artificial intelligence so much. We're all looking at screens all day. having that human to human connection is super important, and everybody should go, get Bob's new book, Don't Look Down. You can get it on bobcampana.com as well as Amazon, and definitely visit redwoodcafetours.com as well to book an international tour. I had a chance to check out the website today. Lots of cool tours on deck, and looks like you guys are doing a lot of really exciting things. And, Bob, this has been a great episode. I really just want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Nate, I'm honored, and thank you so much. And thank you to all of your listeners, and may everyone have a successful future. Thanks again for having me on.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. And I hope you all enjoyed this episode today with Bob Campana.